Member of the British Parliament, Lord Peter Hain, says Zimbabwe must deal with corruption that has dominated international news headlines. Speaking in Parliament yesterday, Hain also touched on issues on sanctions as well. This afternoon, he's going to raise the issue of the Gupta family as well in Parliament. Joining us now via Skype is Lord Peter Hain. Mr. Hain, thank you so much for the time. Appreciated then as well here on Point. Let's talk just very quickly just about how at best, Zimbabwe can deal with its own corruption issues, and then we'll, of course, touch on our own issues as well here locally.
Well, what's been happening under President Mnangagwa these last couple of years has been tragic, because he began in 2018 with many promises, the chance of a new future for Zimbabwe compared with the old one under Robert Mugabe, where the economy was wrecked. There was violence against the opposition and massive corruption involving generals and the senior figures in the armed forces as well. So it seemed as if he wanted to make a new start for the country and be a president for the people instead of a president for himself. And the rest of the world, and I was one, believed him, and we thought, let's give him a chance. Okay, he's been Robert Mugabe's henchman with all the destruction of the country that meant, but he's making promises to the people to respect elections and respect human rights and to invest in the economy and get it growing again and offer a future for the poor Zimbabwean people. But actually, none of those promises have been delivered. On the contrary, he's gone back to the worst of the old times under Mugabe, and it's terrible for the country and it's terrible for the people who starving or poverty-stricken, suffering massive human rights abuse and violence from the government. So, you know, the only way you can deal with corruption is from the top. You've got to stop it from the top. They say a fish rots from the head, and we know what happened under former President Zuma and the Gupta brothers as well, and that's the case in Zimbabwe, I'm afraid.
We're going to touch on the South African context very quickly in a moment, but very succinctly, though, if we can talk about, I mean, you made note of the promises that they're continuously putting out but aren't keeping. They've also said that there actually is no crisis in the country. That's President Mnangagwa. All issues raised are handled. Is there anything to be taken seriously with regards to those statements, or is this just another sort of shadow being placed across the rest of the world to say just don't get involved?
It's completely delusional. He's not fooling anybody. He's not fooling his own people. I'm in touch with brave people inside Zimbabwe, and they are very clear. And everybody who knows the truth knows that those are simply lies. And, you know, the tragedy is that unless President Mnangagwa changes, he'll just drag the country down with him even further. And he won't be the president who is seen in history as a good leader. He'll be seen as a terrible, corrupt, self-serving leader, protecting his tiny elite around him rather than looking after the people. And that's not a good place for any president to be. I met him 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago. He promised me, like he promised the world, that a new future was going to be built. I mean, that was all lies, sadly.
Yeah, and it doesn't feel like there's any lower you can go, but it just seems like they keep finding new depths. Let's talk about South Africa then. You will be in Parliament later this afternoon raising a few issues around South Africa, the Gupta family as well, and their involvement. Let's talk just a little bit briefly about what it is exactly you would like to raise as an issue.
Well, I'm planning to raise in a few hours' time sanctions against the Gupta brothers. I've called for this before. They've looted from South African taxpayers about 7 billion rand. That's massive money, especially with the way the economy has been hit and the national treasury is almost bankrupt because of COVID. It's a massive amount of money that's gone through the international banks and that they're spending in India and Dubai, and that money needs to be recovered and they need to have sanctions put on them. So that's what I will be calling for from the British government. I've called for that before and nothing has been done, so I'm repeating it this afternoon.
Yeah, certainly hope that those words are taken a little bit more seriously this time around. Lord Peter Hain, thank you so much for the time. Really appreciate it there. Member of the British Parliament joining us there as we unpack a few local issues and the word to be set out as well in that British Parliament.